Good evening and welcome back. At this moment, take a deep breath. As you exhale, unwind your body and let go of all the air within and prepare. In today's journey, we'll delve into the paradoxes of ancient Buddhist philosophy. We'll transform how you understand rest, peace, and letting go. Welcome to this exploration of ancient wisdom, a journey into what the Buddha understood about suffering, and how this understanding holds the key to the deep, restorative rest you seek. Tonight, we shall travel together through teachings that have brought peace to countless minds across 25 centuries. These are not mere words to help you sleep. They are truths that transform how you relate to your own mind, your own experience, and ultimately, how you find rest. You see, the Buddha made a remarkable discovery. He found that our inability to rest, our racing thoughts at night, our anxious minds that refuse to settle, these are not random afflictions. They arise from a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of existence itself. Most sleep guiders tells you to quiet your mind, to push away thoughts, to force relaxation. But the Buddha taught something far more profound. He taught that true rest comes not from suppressing the mind, but from understanding it so deeply that it naturally settles, like mud gradually clearing. From disturbed water, the connection between suffering and sleeplessness is not metaphorical. It is direct. It is causal. And once you understand this connection, once you truly see it, the quality of your rest transforms forever in the hours ahead. We shall explore 3 profound insights from the Buddhist teachings. First, we will examine the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, or, as the Buddha called it in Pali, dukkha. But this is not merely about pain or sadness. It is about the fundamental unsatisfactoriness that pervades human existence when we do not see clearly. We will understand why the unexamined mind cannot rest, why it churns endlessly through the night, replaying the past and rehearsing the future. Second, we will explore the origin of this suffering, what the Buddha called tanha, craving or thirst. We will see how our constant reaching, our endless wanting, our desperate clinging to what we desire, and our fierce rejection of what we fear creates the very turbulence that prevents sleep. The mind that grasps cannot settle. The mind that pushes away cannot rest. And third, we will discover the cessation of suffering, the path of letting go. We will understand anicca, impermanence, and how truly seeing the flowing, changing nature of all things allows the mind to release its grip. This is not philosophical theory. This is the direct path to the peace you seek. Throughout this journey, we shall draw upon the Buddha's own words from the ancient Pali Canon, the earliest recorded teachings. We shall explore stories and parables that have guided seekers for millennia, and we shall see how these ancient insights speak directly to the modern mind, struggling to find rest in our turbulent world. So settle yourself comfortably now. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Simply listen and allow these teachings to work upon your understanding. The Buddha taught that right view, correct understanding, is the foundation of all transformation. Tonight, we cultivate that view together. Let us begin with the first great truth that the Buddha proclaimed upon his awakening, the truth that opens the door to all liberation, the recognition of suffering itself. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment was delivered in the deer park at Sarnath to 5 ascetics who had been his former companions. This teaching, known as the Dhammacappapo Sutta, the discourse on the turning of the wheel of Dharma begins with a statement so simple yet so profound that it has echoed through the centuries. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, union with what is displeasing is suffering, separation from what is pleasing is suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. This is the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha now. The word dukkha is often translated as suffering, but this translation, while convenient, does not capture the full depth of what the Buddha meant. Dukkha is not merely pain or obvious distress. It is something far more subtle, far more pervasive. Dukkha means unsatisfactoriness. It means the inherent instability and unreliability of all conditioned phenomena. It means the deep, often unnoticed stress that comes from living in a state of fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of reality. The Pali word dukkha is actually composed of two parts. Du means bad or difficult, and ka originally referred to the axle hole of a wheel. A wheel with a poor axle hole, one that is off-center or misaligned, creates a rough, uncomfortable ride. This is dukkha, the journey of life when we do not understand its nature correctly, when we are out of alignment with reality, becomes unnecessarily difficult and uncomfortable. Consider your own experience as you lie here tonight. Perhaps your body is comfortable, perhaps you are safe, perhaps there is no immediate crisis, yet the mind churns, it worries, it replays conversations from the day, it rehearses scenarios for tomorrow, it judges itself for not sleeping, it fears the consequences of tiredness. This churning, this inability to rest even when all external conditions are favorable. This is dukkha. The Buddha made a radical observation. He saw that even in moments of pleasure, even in experiences we call happiness, there is an undercurrent of dukkha. Why? Because all pleasant experiences are impermanent. They arise and they pass away. And in their passing, there is disappointment, there is loss, there is the subtle ache of wanting them to continue. We cannot hold on to pleasure. We cannot make happiness permanent. And this very fact, this inability to secure lasting satisfaction, creates a background tension in the mind. This tension prevents sleep. The mind that believes it can secure permanent happiness, that believes it can arrange all conditions perfectly, that believes it can control outcomes, this mind can never truly rest. It is always vigilant, always planning, always defending, always reaching. The Buddha identified three forms of dukkha, three layers of this unsatisfactoriness that we must understand if we are to find peace. The first is dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the obvious pain, physical discomfort, emotional distress, grief, fear, anger. This is what we commonly recognize as suffering. When the body aches, when loss strikes, when fear grips the heart, we know we are suffering. This form is unmistakable. The second is viparinama, the suffering of change. This is more subtle. This is the suffering inherent in the fact that all pleasant experiences must end. The wonderful meal finishes, the holiday concludes, the moment of joy fades. Even as we experience pleasure, if we are attentive, we can feel the shadow of its ending. We tighten around the experience, trying to hold it, trying to make it last. This tightening is itself a form of suffering. Think of a beautiful sunset you once witnessed. In the moment of watching, there was perhaps a sense of awe, of peace, of connection to something larger. But even as you experienced this beauty, was there not also a subtle sadness, a knowing that this moment would pass, a wish that it could last? Perhaps you took a photograph, trying to capture the moment, to make it permanent. But the photograph is not the sunset. It is a memory, a representation, already one step removed from the living experience. This is viparinamadukkha, the suffering that comes from the changing nature of all pleasant experiences. And the third, the most profound, is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence itself. This is the deepest teaching. The Buddha saw that the very nature of conditioned phenomena, the nature of all things that arise dependent on causes and conditions, is inherently unsatisfactory. Why? Because everything conditioned is impermanent, unreliable, and beyond our ultimate control. We build our sense of self, our sense of security, our sense of meaning upon things that are by nature unstable. This is like building a house upon sand. The structure may stand for a time, but its foundation is unreliable. Your sleeplessness tonight is rooted in this third form of dukkha. The mind is trying to secure itself, trying to establish control, trying to create permanence in a world where everything is flowing and changing. The mind lies awake, reviewing, planning, worrying, because it believes that through mental activity, it can secure what cannot be secured. It believes that through thinking, it can make the impermanent permanent, the unreliable reliable, the uncontrollable controllable. This is the fundamental delusion that the Buddha awakened from. And it is this delusion that keeps you awake. Now, let us be clear about what the Buddha was not saying. He was not saying that life is only suffering, that there is no joy, no beauty, no love, no wonder. This would be a nihilistic misunderstanding of his teaching. The Buddha himself experienced deep peace, profound joy, genuine happiness. What he was pointing to is that if we do not understand the nature of experience correctly, if we cling to pleasure and push away pain, if we try to make permanent what is by nature impermanent, then we create suffering for ourselves. The recognition of dukkha is not meant to make us pessimistic or depressed. Quite the opposite. It is meant to awaken us to reality as it actually is, so that we stop fighting against the nature of things. When we stop fighting, when we stop resisting, when we stop demanding that reality be other than it is, a profound peace becomes possible. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses, the Buddha uses a powerful simile to illustrate this point. He compares our usual relationship to experience to being shot by two arrows. The first arrow is the actual experience, the pain, the loss, the difficulty. This arrow is unavoidable. It is part of the nature of conditioned existence. But the second arrow, the Buddha says, we shoot at ourselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the first, our resistance, our anger, our fear, our story about what the pain means, our judgment of ourselves for experiencing it. The first arrow is dukkha in the sense of the inevitable challenges of existence. The second arrow is dukkha in the sense of the suffering we create through our misunderstanding and reactivity. The Buddha's teaching is aimed at helping us avoid shooting that second arrow. We cannot always prevent the first arrow. Life brings pain, loss, change, uncertainty. But we can learn not to compound that pain with our reactivity. As you lie here tonight, unable to sleep, consider this teaching. Perhaps there is a genuine difficulty in your life right now, a challenge at work, a strain in a relationship, a concern about health or finances. This is the first arrow. It is real. It requires your attention and skillful response. But notice how the mind multiplies this difficulty. It worries not just about the actual situation, but about all the terrible things that might happen. It judges you for having the problem. It compares you to others who seem to have it easier. It tells stories about inadequacy or unfairness. This proliferation, this multiplication of the original difficulty, this is the second arrow. And this is where most of our suffering actually lies. Let us examine more deeply how this dukkha manifests in the specific context of sleep and rest. The Buddha taught about the 5 aggregates of clinging, the 5 bundles of grasping that constitute what we call the self. These are form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. It is through clinging to these aggregates as me and mine that dukkha arises. Consider the aggregate of form, the physical body. As you lie here, perhaps you notice discomfort, a tension in the shoulders, an ache in the back, the body's temperature, feeling not quite right. The mind immediately identifies with this discomfort. This is my pain. My body is not comfortable. I need it to be different. This identification, this claiming of the body's sensations as mine, as something I must fix or control, creates agitation. The body simply has sensations arising and passing. It is the mind's relationship to these sensations, the claiming of them, the resistance to them, that creates suffering. The Buddha taught a practice of observing the body with what he called kyanupassana, contemplation of the body. Not thinking about the body, but directly observing it. Feeling the sensations as they actually are, without the overlay of judgment or story. When you observe the body in this way, you begin to notice something remarkable. The sensations are constantly changing. That ache in the back is not a solid, unchanging thing. It is a flow of sensations, appearing and disappearing, intensifying and softening, moving and shifting. When you stop trying to make it go away, when you simply observe it with clear awareness, often it changes on its own, not because you controlled it, but because change is its nature. Or consider the aggregate of feeling, the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tone that accompanies every experience. A thought arises about tomorrow's responsibilities. An unpleasant feeling accompanies it. Immediately, the mind contracts around this unpleasantness. It tries to push the thought away. It judges itself for having the thought. It worries about the worry. Layer upon layer of reactivity builds upon a simple, unpleasant feeling tone. The original feeling may have lasted only a moment, but the mental proliferation around it continues for hours, preventing sleep. The Buddha taught Vedananupassana, contemplation of feelings. This means observing the feeling tone of experience directly, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That is all. Not the story about the feeling, not the judgment of the feeling, not the reactivity to the feeling, simply the bare feeling tone itself. When you observe feelings in this way, you notice that they too are impermanent. A pleasant feeling arises and passes. An unpleasant feeling arises and passes. Even what seems like a continuous, unpleasant feeling, when observed closely, is actually a series of moments, each slightly different, appearing and disappearing in rapid succession. And here is the liberating insight. If you do not grasp at pleasant feelings, trying to make them last, they arise and pass naturally without creating the suffering of clinging. If you do not push away unpleasant feelings, resisting their presence, they arise and pass naturally without creating the suffering of aversion. The feelings themselves are not the problem. Your relationship to them, your grasping and pushing, this is where dukkha is created. The aggregate of perception labels and categorizes experience. This is good, this is bad. This thought means I am anxious. This sensation means something is wrong. These perceptions, these labels, are not reality itself. They are the mind's interpretation of reality. But we take them as absolute truth. We believe our perceptions completely, and this belief keeps us trapped in reactivity. The Buddha taught sana, the understanding that perceptions are constructed, not given. They arise based on past conditioning, past experience, learned patterns. A sound in the night is perceived as threatening or benign based on past association, not on the sound itself. A bodily sensation is perceived as dangerous or harmless, based on learned interpretation. These perceptions happen so quickly, so automatically, that we rarely recognize them as perceptions. We think we are perceiving reality directly, but we are always perceiving through the filter of past conditioning. When you recognize this, when you see that your perceptions are interpretations rather than direct reality, something loosens. You can question your perceptions. You can hold them more lightly. You can recognize that the story your mind is telling about a situation may not be accurate. This creates space between stimulus and response, space where wisdom can operate rather than automatic reactivity. Mental formations. The fourth aggregate include all our habits of mind, our conditioning, our patterns of response. Perhaps you have a habit of reviewing the day before sleep, analyzing what went wrong, planning how to do better. This habit feels productive, feels necessary, but it is simply a conditioned pattern, repeated so many times it has become automatic. The Buddha taught that we can observe these patterns without being controlled by them. We can see them as sankhara-conditioned formations, arising due to past causes, not as essential aspects of who we are. This aggregate is vast. It includes all our volitional activities, all our intentions, all our habitual responses. It includes our tendencies toward anger or fear, our patterns of self-judgment, our default ways of interpreting situations. All of this is conditioned. All of this has been learned. And crucially, all of this can be unlearned, or rather, seen through. When you recognize a mental formation as a mental formation, when you see a habitual pattern as just a pattern, not as truth, not as self, you are no longer completely controlled by it. And consciousness, the fifth aggregate, is awareness itself, the knowing of experience. Even this, the Buddha taught, is impermanent and conditioned. Consciousness arises dependent on contacts between sense organ and sense object. It is not a permanent self, not an unchanging witness. It too comes and goes, appears and disappears. Eye consciousness arises when the eye contacts are visible form. Ear consciousness arises when the ear contacts are sound. Mind consciousness arises when the mind contacts a mental object, a thought or memory. This teaching is subtle and can be difficult to grasp. We tend to think of consciousness as the stable background, the unchanging observer of changing experience. But the Buddha pointed to something more radical. Consciousness itself is part of the flow. It arises and ceases, moment by moment. There is no eternal witness standing apart from experience. There is simply the arising and passing of knowing. Different types of consciousness appearing and disappearing based on conditions. When we cling to any of these aggregates as me or mine, when we identify with them, when we try to control them, dukkha arises. The body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, all are flowing, changing, unreliable. To grasp at them for security is to grasp at water. To demand that they be other than they are is to fight against the fundamental nature of conditioned existence. This is why ordinary approaches to sleep so often fail. They treat the symptoms without addressing the root cause. They try to manipulate the aggregates, to force the body to relax, to suppress thoughts, to create pleasant feelings, to control consciousness. But these aggregates cannot ultimately be controlled. They operate according to their own nature, arising and passing based on conditions, not on our will. The Buddha's approach is radically different. Rather than trying to control experience, he taught us to understand it. Rather than fighting against the aggregates, he taught us to see them clearly, to recognize their impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature. And in that recognition, clinging naturally releases. When clinging releases, dukkha ceases. When dukkha ceases, the mind settles into its natural state of peace. In the Anattalakkhana Sutta, the discourse on the not self-characteristic, the Buddha questions his 5 companions systematically about each aggregate. Is form permanent or impermanent? He asks. Impermanent, venerable sir, they reply. Is what is impermanent satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Unsatisfactory, venerable sir. Is it fitting to regard what is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and subject to change as, this is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, venerable sir. He asks the same questions about feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Each time, the answer is the same. These aggregates are impermanent, unsatisfactory when clung to, and not fit to be regarded as self. This systematic questioning is not meant to be merely intellectual. It is meant to be investigated directly in one's own experience. The Buddha is inviting us to look closely at what we take to be ourselves and see if it holds up under examination. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, the Buddha provides detailed instructions for observing these aggregates. He teaches us to observe the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, mental phenomena in mental phenomena. Not observing from outside, but observing directly, intimately, within experience itself. When observing the body, he says, know the in-breath as the in-breath, know the out-breath as the out-breath, know the body walking, standing, sitting, lying, down, know all positions and movements of the body, and in this knowing, understand, this is simply body, not my body. Not I am the body, simply body, a collection of elements, temporarily configured, arising and passing according to conditions. He, teaches contemplation of the body's elements. This body is composed of the earth element, the solidity and resistance in bones and flesh. It is composed of the water element, the fluidity in blood and lymph. It is composed of the fire element, the temperature and metabolism that maintain life. It is composed of the air element, the movement in breath and circulation. These four elements come together temporarily to form what we call a body. They will separate again at death, returning to the greater field of elements from which they came. This is not morbid contemplation. It is realistic understanding. It is seeing the body as it actually is, not as we wish it to be. When observing feelings, know a pleasant feeling as pleasant, an unpleasant feeling as unpleasant, a neutral feeling as neutral. And understand, these feelings are impermanent. They arise and pass. They are not to be grasped or rejected. They are simply the natural response of organism to conditions. In this understanding, the reactivity to feelings lessens. The mind does not chase after pleasant feelings or run from unpleasant ones. It simply observes the feeling tone, recognizes its impermanent nature, and remains equanimous. The Buddha further distinguishes between worldly and unworldly feelings. A worldly pleasant feeling is one based on sensual experience. An unworldly pleasant feeling is one based on renunciation or on meditative joy. A worldly unpleasant feeling is one based on attachment to sensual experience. An unworldly, unpleasant feeling is one based on the sincere wish for liberation, the healthy discontent with the unsatisfactory nature of conditioned existence. These distinctions help us understand our feelings more subtly, more accurately, when observing the mind. Know a mind with desire as a mind with desire, a mind with aversion as a mind with aversion, a mind with delusion as a mind with delusion. Know a concentrated mind as concentrated, a scattered mind as scattered. Know a great mind as great, a small mind as small. Know a surpassable mind as surpassable, an unsurpassable mind as unsurpassable. Know a concentrated mind as concentrated, an unconcentrated mind as unconcentrated. Know a liberated mind as liberated, an unliberated mind as unliberated. This is not judgment, it is recognition. The mind has many states, constantly changing. By knowing each state as it arises, by recognizing its characteristics, we stop identifying with the state. We see that these are visitors, temporary conditions of mind, not who we are. The mind that is scattered now may be concentrated later. The mind with desire now may be free of desire later. None of these states are permanent. None define us absolutely. And when observing mental phenomena, understand the hindrances when they arise. No sensory desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, doubt. Understand how they arise, how they are sustained, how they cease. These hindrances are what prevent meditation, what prevent concentration, what prevent clear seeing. And significantly for our purposes tonight, these hindrances are what prevent sleep. Restlessness and worry, uddhaka kukuka, is particularly relevant. The mind that cannot settle, that jumps from thought to thought, that worries about past and future, this is the restless mind. The Buddha taught specific antidotes to this hindrance. One is concentration practice, gathering the mind to a single object. Another is calming the bodily formation, relaxing the body to help calm the mind. Another is reflecting on the teachings, bringing wise attention to bear on the worried thoughts to see their impermanent, insubstantial nature. Observe also the factors of awakening when they arise. Know mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. Understand their conditions, their development, their maturation. These 7 factors, when cultivated, lead to awakening, to the direct realization of the truth the Buddha taught. Mindfulness is the foundation. Investigation examines experience closely. Energy sustains the practice. Joy arises from skillful practice. Tranquility is the calming of body and mind. Concentration is the collected, unified mind. Equanimity is the balanced, non-reactive awareness that sees all phenomena with the same clear gaze. This is the Buddha's medicine for dukkha. Not positive thinking, not distraction, not suppression, but clear, direct, unflinching observation of experience as it actually is. And in this observation, wisdom arises, the wisdom that sees impermanence directly, the wisdom that recognizes the unsatisfactory nature of clinging, the wisdom that understands there is no permanent, unchanging self to be found in these flowing aggregates. This wisdom does not come from belief. It does not come from faith. It comes from direct observation. The Buddha famously said in the Kalama Sutta, "Do not believe something simply because it has been passed down through tradition, or because it has been said many times, or because it is written in scriptures, or because it accords with your beliefs, or because it seems logical, or because it accords with your philosophy, or because it appears true after consideration, or because the speaker appears trustworthy, or out of respect for a teacher. When you know for yourselves that these things are wholesome, blameless, praised by the wise, and when undertaken and observed led to benefit and happiness, then you should enter and dwell in them." This is an extraordinary statement for a religious teacher. The Buddha is telling us not to believe him on authority, but to test his teachings in our own direct experience. If you find them to be true, leading to benefit, to welfare, to happiness, then accept them and live by them. If not, abandon them. So even now, as you listen, you can test this teaching. Observe your own experience. Notice the thoughts that arise and pass. Are they permanent or impermanent? Notice the sensations in the body constantly changing. Are they permanent or impermanent? Notice feelings appearing and disappearing. Are they permanent or impermanent? Is there anything in your experience right now that is truly permanent? Is there anything that is completely satisfactory when grasped? Is there anything that is truly under your absolute control? If you observe carefully, honestly, you will see that the Buddha's teaching is not philosophy or theory. It is description. It is pointing to what is already true, what has always been true, but what we have not clearly seen. We have been so busy trying to control experience, trying to make it conform to our desires, that we have not stopped to observe what it actually is. There is a story from the Pali Canon that illustrates this teaching beautifully. It is the story of Pattakara, a woman who experienced devastating loss and, through that loss, came to profound awakening. Pattakara was born into a wealthy merchant family in Savatthi, As a young woman, she fell in love with a servant in her household. Her parents, disapproving of this relationship, planned to marry her to a man of suitable status. In desperation, she fled with her lover to a distant village where they lived. As simple farmers, years passed, and Patakara became pregnant. As the time of birth approached, she wished to return to her parents' home for the delivery, as was the custom. Her husband refused, fearing her parents' anger. But when he was away, Patakara set out on the journey alone. Driven by her longing for her family, her husband, discovering she had left, rushed after her. But on the road, far from any village, her labor began. She gave birth beside the path. That night, as they huddled with their newborn, a terrible storm arose. Her husband went to gather materials to build a shelter. In the darkness, he disturbed a nest of vipers and was bitten. He died there, alone, trying to protect his family. Patakara, not knowing what had happened, waited through the night with her infant and her toddler son. At dawn, she found her husband's body, grief-stricken, but needing to survive, she continued toward her family home, carrying her infant and leading her toddler by the hand. They came to a river, swollen by the storm. She could not carry both children across at once. She left her toddler on the bank and waded across with her infant. She placed the baby on the far shore and returned for her older son. But as she reached the middle of the river, a hawk, seeing the infant alone, swooped down and seized it. Patakara screamed and waved her arms, but the hawk flew away. The toddler, hearing his mother's cry and thinking she was calling to him, stepped into the river. The current swept him away before her eyes. Mad with grief, she continued to her parents' home. On the outskirts of the city, she met a man coming from town. She asked about her family. The man, not recognizing her, told her that in the storm, a wealthy merchant's house had collapsed, killing the merchant, his wife, and their son. He pointed to the smoke rising from their funeral pyre. In one day, Patakara had lost her husband, both her children and her entire family. Her mind shattered. She tore off her clothes and wandered the streets, insane with grief, crying out her losses to anyone who would listen. She wandered thus until she came to the Jetavana monastery where the Buddha was teaching. The monks tried to prevent her from entering, but the Buddha, seeing her, said, "Let her come. Bring her to mindfulness." As Patakara approached, the Buddha spoke to her with great compassion. "Sister, recover your mindfulness." At his words, something shifted in her. A small portion of clarity returned. Someone gave her a robe to cover herself. She bowed before the Buddha and told him her story, weeping. The Buddha listened, and then he spoke. "Patakara, do not think you are alone in your grief. Throughout countless lifetimes, the tears you have shed for lost loved ones are greater than the waters of the 4 great oceans. In the long journey of birth and death, you have experienced this loss not once, but thousands upon thousands of times. You have lost children, parents, husbands, friends, beyond counting. This is the nature of conditioned existence. All that arises passeth away. All that meets must part. This is not punishment. This is not personal. This is simply the nature of all conditioned things." He continued, "Searching for your loved ones in birth and death is like seeking someone in a dream. Where have they gone? They have gone where all conditioned things go. They have dissolved back into the elements, the earth, water, fire, and air from which they were temporarily composed. To cling to them, to demand that they remain, is to cling to the impossible. It is this clinging, this resistance to the truth of impermanence, that creates your suffering. Then the Buddha taught her about dukkha, about the unsatisfactory nature of all conditioned existence when we do not see it clearly. He taught her about the arising and passing of all phenomena. He taught her to observe her own mind, to see grief as a conditioned response arising due to causes, and capable of ceasing when those causes are understood. But Akara listened deeply, and as she listened, understanding arose in her. She saw that her resistance to what had happened, her desperate wish that things could be different, her clinging to what was already gone, this was the source of her torment. The events themselves were already past. They could not be changed. But her relationship to those events, her understanding of them, this could transform. The Buddha taught her in stages. First, he established her in moral conduct, in sila. She took the precepts, the ethical guidelines that create a stable foundation for practice. Then he taught her about generosity, about dana, the practice of giving that loosens the grip of selfishness. Then he taught her about the heavenly realms, about the fruits of good action. And then, seeing that her mind was ready, pliant, without hindrances, elevated and clear, he taught her the Four Noble Truths. Bhattakara became a nun and devoted herself to practice. Later, after she had developed concentration and insight, she was washing her feet one evening. She poured water from a vessel and watched it flow down the slope. Some water traveled only a short distance before being absorbed into the earth. Some water flowed farther before disappearing. Some water flowed all the way to the bottom of the hill. As she watched this simple phenomenon, sudden, complete understanding arose. She saw that lives are like this water. Some beings live only briefly. Some live longer. Some live to old age. But all, without exception, flow toward death. None escape. This is not tragedy. This is simply the nature of conditioned existence. All formations are impermanent. All formations are unsatisfactory when clung to. All phenomena are not self. In that moment, Bhattakara awakened fully. She became an arahant, one who has realized complete liberation. Her grief did not disappear entirely. The memory remained, but her suffering ended. She could remember her loved ones with tenderness, but without the tearing pain of resistance. She had stopped fighting against reality. She had stopped demanding that impermanent things be permanent. And in that stopping, she found unshakable peace. The Buddha later spoke a verse about her realization. Though one should live 100 years without seeing the arising and passing of things, yet better is a single day lived seeing their arising and passing. Bhattakara became a great teacher herself. Many women came to her to be ordained, drawn by her wisdom and compassion. She understood suffering intimately, and she understood liberation intimately. She could guide others with the authority of direct experience. The verses attributed to her in the Theragatha, the verses of the elder nuns, speak of her complete freedom, her utter release from all bondage. This story teaches us the essence of the First Noble Truth. Dukkha is not the pain itself. Bhattakara experienced genuine, devastating loss. The dukkha, the unnecessary suffering, was her resistance to the impermanent nature of all things. When she saw clearly that all conditioned phenomena arise and pass. When she stopped demanding that reality be different from what it is, her suffering ceased even though the memory of loss remained. This is the understanding that allows the mind to rest, the mind that accepts impermanence, that does not cling to the past or grasp at the future, that sees clearly the flowing nature of all experience. This mind can settle. It has nothing to defend. It has nothing to secure. It can simply be, moment by moment, with what is now. Patakara's realization was complete and sudden, the fruit of intense practice and the perfect ripening of conditions. For most of us, understanding develops more gradually, but even a partial glimpse of this truth, even a momentary recognition of impermanence, can bring relief. When we see, even for a moment, that our thoughts are just thoughts, that our feelings are just feelings, that this moment of discomfort or anxiety is simply a passing condition, not a permanent state, something loosens in the mind. The Buddha compared the untrained mind to a monkey, swinging from branch to branch, never still, always grasping the next thing. This monkey mind lies awake at night, swinging from thought to thought, worry to worry, memory to planning to judgment, never resting. Why? Because it believes that through this constant movement it can secure itself. It believes that if it just thinks enough, plans enough, reviews enough, it can make things safe, make things permanent, make things controllable. But the trained mind, the mind that understands dukkha, sees the futility of this endless grasping. It sees that safety cannot be found through control, because the nature of conditioned existence is beyond our ultimate control. It sees that permanence cannot be achieved, because the nature of all things is impermanence. And in seeing this clearly, deeply, repeatedly, the grasping begins to release. This releasing is not resignation. It is not giving up or becoming passive. It is something far more profound. It is the recognition of what is actually possible and what is not. We cannot make impermanent things permanent. We cannot control all conditions. We cannot prevent loss and change. These are simply not possible. To exhaust ourselves trying to achieve the impossible is suffering. But what is possible? It is possible to understand our experience clearly. It is possible to observe our reactions without being controlled by them. It is possible to meet each moment with awareness rather than with automatic reactivity. It is possible to recognize impermanence directly and to live in harmony with it rather than in opposition to it. And it is possible to find peace, deep and unshakable peace, not through controlling conditions, but through understanding their nature. This understanding is what the Buddha called right view, samadhi, the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the foundation of all transformation. Without right view, we are lost in the forest of confusion, mistaking the impermanent for permanent, the unsatisfactory for satisfactory, the not self for self. With right view, the path becomes clear. We see where we are, where we need to go, and how to get there. Right view has two aspects. There is mundane right view and supramundane right view. Mundane right view is the understanding of karma, of cause and effect in the moral realm. It is the understanding that wholesome actions lead to happiness and unwholesome actions lead to suffering. This view motivates ethical conduct and creates the conditions for deeper practice. Supramundane right view is the direct penetration of the Four Noble Truths, the seeing of things as they actually are. This is the view that liberates, the view that cuts through delusion at its root. This is the view that Patakara realized as she watched the water flowing down the hill. This is the view that ends suffering completely and finally. But even before full liberation, even in the development of practice, right view transforms our experience. When we understand, even intellectually at first, that clinging causes suffering, we begin to notice our clinging. We catch ourselves grasping at pleasant experience, pushing away unpleasant experience. And in that noticing, in that awareness, the grip loosens slightly. We are no longer completely identified with the craving or aversion. We see it happening, and what can be seen can eventually be released. As you lie here tonight, perhaps you can begin to sense this truth in your own experience. Notice the thoughts that prevent sleep. Are they not thoughts of resistance? Resistance to how the day went. Resistance to how you feel. Resistance to the uncertainty of tomorrow. The mind churns because it is fighting against what is, or what might be. What if, just for this moment, you stopped fighting? Not giving up, not becoming passive, but simply ceasing the internal war against reality. What if you allowed this moment to be exactly as it is, with all its uncertainty, all its incompleteness, all its imperfection? What if you recognized that your sleeplessness itself is an impermanent condition, arising due to causes, and capable of ceasing when those causes are understood? This is the beginning of wisdom. This is the first noble truth. Not a pessimistic declaration that life is suffering, but a realistic recognition that when we misunderstand the nature of existence, when we cling to what cannot be held, when we resist what cannot be prevented, we create suffering for ourselves. The good news, the profoundly liberating news, is that this suffering is not necessary. It arises from ignorance, and therefore it can cease through understanding. This understanding is what we are cultivating together tonight. The Buddha did not merely diagnose the disease. He provided the complete cure. But to understand the cure, we must first understand more deeply the cause of the disease. The first noble truth shows us that dukkha exists. That unsatisfactoriness pervades conditioned existence when we relate to it incorrectly. But why? What is the root cause? What is the mechanism by which this suffering arises? This is what we must explore next. We must investigate what the Buddha called the second noble truth, the origin of suffering. We must examine tanha, the thirst, the craving, the endless wanting, that drives the mind's restless pursuit and prevents its peace. For it is not enough to recognize suffering. We must understand its source. A physician does not merely identify symptoms. He traces them to their cause, their origin. Only then can effective treatment be prescribed. The Buddha was often called the great physician, and his teaching follows this medical model precisely. First, the diagnosis. Dukkha exists. Second, the etiology. This is its cause. Third, the prognosis. It can be cured. Fourth, the treatment. This is the path to its ending. We have examined the diagnosis thoroughly. Now we turn to the cause. What is it that keeps the mind turning, churning, unable to rest? What is the engine that drives this endless becoming? This constant dissatisfaction, this perpetual seeking that finds no lasting fulfillment. The Buddha pointed to something both simple and profound. He pointed to craving, to tanha, to the mind's constant thirst for something other than what is. Let us turn now to this exploration, to the second noble truth, to understanding the very root of our restlessness. The second noble truth, Samudaya, speaks to the origin of suffering. In the Dhammacappavan Sutta, the Buddha states it clearly and directly. This is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is this craving tanha which leads to repeated existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. Tanha. This single word in Pali encompasses the entire mechanism by which suffering arises. It is usually translated as craving or thirst, and both translations point to something essential. Thirst implies an urgent need, a driving compulsion, a state of lack that demands to be filled. Craving suggests a reaching toward, a grasping at, an inability to rest content with what is. Consider actual physical thirst. When the body needs water, everything else becomes secondary. The mind focuses on the need, on finding water, on satisfying the thirst. There is a tension, an incompleteness, a state of non-rest. And even after drinking, after the immediate thirst is quenched, thirst will arise again. It is never permanently satisfied. This is the nature of tanha. It is an endless cycle of wanting, temporary satisfaction, and wanting again. But the Buddha was not speaking merely of physical thirst or even of obvious desires. He was pointing to something far more subtle and pervasive. He was pointing to the fundamental orientation of the unawakened mind, the mind that has not understood the nature of reality. This mind is always in a state of reaching, always seeking, always dissatisfied with what is, always believing that fulfillment lies just ahead. In the next experience, the next achievement, the next moment. This is why you cannot sleep. The mind is thirsty. It is reaching. It is wanting. It wants tomorrow to go well. It wants yesterday to have been different. It wants this moment of wakefulness to end. It wants sleep, and in wanting sleep, it creates the very agitation that prevents sleep. This is the paradox of tanha. The more we crave, the more we suffer. The more we grasp, the more we create the conditions for dissatisfaction. The Buddha identified 3 types of tanha, 3 forms of craving that keep us bound to suffering. The first is kama-tanha, craving for sensual pleasures. This is the most obvious form. The craving for pleasant sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touch, sensations. The desire for wealth, for status, for the pleasures of the senses. This craving drives much of human activity. We organize our lives around the pursuit of pleasant experiences and the avoidance of unpleasant ones. We work to earn money to buy things that will bring pleasure. We seek relationships that will provide emotional satisfaction. We consume entertainment to stimulate pleasant feelings. None of this is inherently wrong. The Buddha was not an ascetic who rejected all pleasure. He himself had experimented with extreme asceticism before his enlightenment and found it unhelpful. He taught the middle way, neither indulgence nor denial. But he saw clearly that when we are driven by craving for sensual pleasure, when we believe that happiness lies in acquiring and consuming pleasant experiences, we create suffering for ourselves. Why? Because sensual pleasures are impermanent. They arise and they cease. The delicious meal ends. the pleasant sensation fades. The exciting experience becomes ordinary through repetition. And in their ending, in their fading, there is disappointment. There is loss. There is the immediate arising of craving for the next pleasant experience. We are on a treadmill, constantly running, never arriving. The second type is bhavatanha, craving for existence or becoming. This is more subtle. This is the craving to be someone, to become something, to establish ourselves as a particular identity. It is the craving for recognition, for achievement, for the building up of self. We want to be seen as successful, as intelligent, as attractive, as spiritual, as good. We create a self-image, and then we crave experiences that confirm and enhance this image. This craving for becoming is intimately tied to our sense of self. We have an idea of who we are and who we want to be, and we organize our lives around becoming that person. We pursue goals, we develop skills, we cultivate relationships, all in service of this project of becoming. But this too is ultimately unsatisfactory. The self we are trying to establish is itself impermanent, unreliable, constantly changing. The achievements we grasp fade. The recognition we receive is temporary. The identity we build is always under threat, always needing defense, always requiring maintenance. As you lie here tonight, notice this craving for becoming. Perhaps your mind is planning how you will be tomorrow, what you will achieve, how you will handle challenges, how you will present yourself. This is bhavatanha, the mind trying to construct a self, trying to become someone, trying to secure itself through future becoming. And this very activity prevents rest. The mind that is always becoming cannot simply be. It cannot rest in the present moment as it is. The third type is vibhavatanha, craving for non-existence or annihilation. This may seem contradictory. How? Can craving for non-existence be a form of craving? But the Buddha saw this clearly. This is the craving to escape, to avoid, to make unpleasant experiences disappear. It is the wish for difficult emotions to end, for challenging situations to vanish, for aspects of ourselves we dislike to be eliminated. In its extreme form, it is the desire for complete annihilation, for the self to cease to exist. But this too is craving. It is still the mind reaching, still the mind in a state of resistance and dissatisfaction. Instead of grasping toward pleasant experience, it is pushing away unpleasant experience. But the mechanism is the same. It is tanha. It is the inability to rest with what is. It is the constant movement of attraction and repulsion, reaching and rejecting. Notice in your own experience tonight. The mind that cannot sleep is engaged in all three forms of craving. It craves pleasant experiences, perhaps remembering pleasant moments from the past or imagining pleasant scenarios in the future. It craves to become someone who handles things well, who is productive tomorrow, who overcomes current difficulties. And it craves for unpleasant experiences to end, for worries to disappear, for this state of wakefulness itself to be annihilated and replaced with sleep. All three forms of craving create agitation. They prevent the mind from settling. They keep it in constant motion, constantly seeking, constantly dissatisfied. The Buddha saw this pattern with perfect clarity, and he saw that this pattern is not personal, not unique to any individual. It is the default operation of the unawakened mind. It is what the mind does when it does not understand the nature of reality. Now, why does craving arise? What is its source? The Buddha traced it back to feeling, to Vedana. When a pleasant feeling arises, craving to prolong it arises. When an unpleasant feeling arises, craving to end it arises. When a neutral feeling arises, often ignorance about its nature arises, and then craving for something more interesting, more stimulating. This is the sequence. Contact between sense organ and sense object gives rise to consciousness. Consciousness and contact give rise to feeling. Feeling gives rise to craving. Craving gives rise to clinging. And from clinging arises all suffering. This is called paticca samuppada, dependent origination. It is the Buddha's most profound teaching on causality, on how suffering arises through a chain of conditions. Each link in the chain depends on the previous link. Break any link, and the chain is broken. Suffering ceases. This is not fatalism. This is empowerment. Because if suffering arises through causes, then by removing the causes, suffering can be ended. The crucial link, the one where intervention is most effective, is the link between feeling and craving. Feeling arises automatically. It is part of the nature of consciousness. When the eye sees a pleasant form, a pleasant feeling arises. We cannot prevent this. It happens naturally. But what happens next is not automatic. Between feeling and craving, there is a space, a moment where wisdom can operate, a moment where we can observe the feeling without immediately reacting to it with craving. This is the practice. This is where freedom lies. Not in preventing feelings from arising, which is impossible, but in observing feelings clearly, understanding their impermanent nature, and not reacting to them with craving. When we can do this, when we can feel a pleasant feeling without grasping at it, feel an unpleasant feeling without pushing it away, then craving does not arise. And when craving does not arise, clinging does not arise. And when clinging does not arise, suffering does not arise. This is the promise of the Buddha's teaching. Complete freedom from suffering is possible, not by arranging external conditions perfectly, not by achieving all our goals, not by acquiring everything we desire, but by understanding the mechanism of suffering and ceasing to perpetuate it. Let us examine more closely how craving operates in the mind. The Pali texts describe it with the term perupa saturupa, that which is agreeable and pleasing. The mind surveys experience looking for what is agreeable, what is pleasing. When it finds it, it grasps. When it finds what is disagreeable, it rejects. This is happening constantly, mostly below the threshold of conscious awareness. The mind is evaluating, judging, categorizing, reaching, rejecting, all in a continuous stream. This evaluating mind, this judging mind, this craving mind, prevents rest. To rest, to truly rest, the mind must stop this constant activity. It must cease. The endless project of seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. It must come to a state of non-craving, of non-reaching, of acceptance of what is. But how? Simply telling the mind to stop craving does not work. Craving is deeply conditioned. It has operated for so long, through so many lifetimes according to the Buddhist view that it feels like our nature. It feels like who we are. We identify with our desires. We think we are what we want, what we fear, what we hope for. To stop craving feels like ceasing to exist. And here we encounter a profound teaching. The Buddha said that craving arises from ignorance, avidya. We crave because we do not see clearly. We do not understand the nature of what we are craving. We think that acquiring the object of craving will bring lasting satisfaction. We think that avoiding what we fear will bring lasting security. We think that becoming what we want to be will bring lasting happiness. These are all mistakes. They are misunderstandings about the nature of reality. Every object of craving is impermanent. It will change and pass away. Every state we hope to avoid will arise again under the right conditions. Every identity we try to establish is unreliable and constantly shifting. We are craving after things that cannot deliver what we hope they will deliver. This is the fundamental ignorance that drives craving. When we see this clearly, when we understand directly through our own experience that no conditioned thing can provide lasting satisfaction, then craving naturally weakens. Not through suppression, not through force, but through understanding. The mind that sees clearly loses interest in chasing after what it now knows to be unsatisfying. There is a famous simile in the texts. The Buddha compares craving to the taste of honey on the blade of a knife. A child, seeing the honey, licks the blade, attracted by the sweetness. But in licking the blade, the tongue is cut. There is both pleasure and pain mixed together. The pleasure is temporary, superficial. The pain is real and lasting. This is the nature of all experience driven by craving. There may be temporary satisfaction, but it is always mixed with suffering, always leading to more craving, always cutting even as it sweetens. The wise person sees this and no longer licks the blade. Not because they suppress desire, not because they grit their teeth and resist, but because they see clearly that this leads to harm. The seeing itself is the freedom. When you truly see that something leads to suffering, you naturally stop doing it. You do not need to force yourself. The clarity itself protects you. This is why the Buddha emphasized wisdom, panna, over willpower. Willpower can suppress craving temporarily, but it creates tension, creates struggle, creates a sense of deprivation. Wisdom sees through craving, understands its nature, and in that understanding, craving releases naturally. There is no struggle, no sense of giving something up. There is simply clarity and the natural response to clarity. Consider how this works in your own experience. When you were a child, perhaps you believed in certain myths or stories that you later outgrew. When did you stop believing? Not through forcing yourself, not through willpower, simply through growing in understanding, through seeing more clearly. The belief fell away naturally when it was no longer supported by your level of understanding. This is how craving falls away through wisdom, not through struggle, but through seeing. As you lie here tonight, you can begin to observe craving directly. Notice when a thought arises and there is a reaching toward it or a pushing away from it. That movement, that lean of the mind, that is tanha. Notice how the mind wants things to be different. It wants sleep when there is wakefulness. It wants tomorrow to come so today can be over. It wants certain thoughts to stop and other thoughts to continue. All of this is craving. All of this is the movement that prevents rest. And notice something else. Notice the suffering that accompanies craving, the tension, the dissatisfaction, the sense of incompleteness. Craving and suffering arise together. They are two sides of the same coin. Where there is craving, there is suffering. Where craving ceases, suffering ceases. This is not theory. This is something you can observe directly in your own mind right now. The Buddha taught about the proximate cause of craving, what conditions give rise to it. He said that craving arises dependent on feeling, but also dependent on ignorance. It is the combination. Feeling plus ignorance equals craving. Feeling plus wisdom equals equanimity. Same feeling, different response, depending on the presence or absence of understanding. So the practice becomes clear. We must develop wisdom. We must understand reality as it actually is. And specifically, we must understand three characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. These are called the tilakkhana, the three marks of existence. All conditioned things are impermanent anicca. All conditioned things are unsatisfactory when clung to dukkha. All conditioned things are not self-ownerta. When these three characteristics are directly seen, deeply understood, thoroughly penetrated, craving loses its grip. The mind sees there is nothing to grasp, nothing that will provide the permanent satisfaction it seeks, nothing that can be claimed as me or mine. Let us explore a traditional story that illustrates the nature of craving and its consequences. This is the story of King Pasenadi and the lesson of the 4 horses. Found in the Samyutta Nikaya, King Pasenadi of Kosala was a devoted lay follower of the Buddha and often visited him for teachings. One day, the king came to the Buddha and asked about the different types of practitioners on the spiritual path. The Buddha responded with a simile about 4 types of excellent thoroughbred horses. The first horse, the Buddha explained, moves at the mere shadow of the whip before any physical contact. This horse is so sensitive, so responsive, that the slightest indication is enough. It understands immediately what is required and responds with perfect compliance. The second horse moves when the hairs of its body are touched by the whip. The third horse moves when its flesh is touched, and the fourth horse moves only when the whip strikes to the bone. The Buddha then explained the meaning. The first type of practitioner hears about the suffering in someone else's experience, perhaps in another village, perhaps even in another land. Someone has fallen ill, someone has died, someone has lost everything. And hearing this practitioner reflects deeply. They understand that this same suffering could come to them. Impermanence is universal. No one is exempt. This understanding penetrates so deeply that they are moved to practice with urgency, to develop wisdom, to prepare for the inevitable changes of life. This is like the horse that moves at the shadow of the whip. The second type of practitioner needs to see suffering more directly. Someone in their own village becomes ill. Someone they know experiences loss. Now the reality of impermanence becomes more vivid, more personal, and this moves them to practice. This is like the horse that moves when its hairs are touched. The third type needs suffering to come even closer. Someone in their own family falls ill. Someone they love dies. Now suffering is at their door, and they cannot ignore it. This, finally, moves them to earnest practice. This is like the horse that moves when its flesh is touched. And the fourth type, the Buddha said with compassion, does not practice until they themselves are experiencing acute suffering, until they themselves are sick, grieving, facing death. Only then do they turn to the teachings, seeking relief. This is like the horse that moves only when struck to the bone. The Buddha did not criticize any of these types. He simply observed that people awaken at different rates with different degrees of sensitivity to the truth of suffering. But he encouraged his listeners to be like the first horse, to learn from the universal truth of impermanence without needing to wait for her personal disaster to motivate practice. This story teaches us about craving in a subtle way. What keeps the second, third, and fourth horses from responding earlier? What keeps them from seeing the truth that is already evident? It is craving. Craving for existence to continue as it is. Craving for the pleasant illusion that we are somehow exempt from universal laws. Craving to avoid the uncomfortable truth of impermanence and suffering. We want to believe that things will stay the same, that the people we love will always be here, that our health will last, that our circumstances will not change dramatically. This wanting, this craving for stability in an unstable world blinds us to reality. It keeps us from responding to the truth that is already apparent if we would only look. King Pasenadi himself provides another teaching about craving. The texts record that he struggled with overeating. He loved food and ate to excess, which caused him discomfort and made him drowsy during the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha taught him a verse to recite while eating. When a person is constantly mindful, knowing moderation in the food they eat, their ailments decrease, they age slowly, and they preserve their life force. This simple teaching about food contains the entire teaching about craving. Craving leads to excess. Excess leads to suffering. Mindfulness and understanding of moderation lead to well-being. This applies not just to food, but to all experience. Craving leads us to excess in all things, to always wanting more, to never being satisfied with what is. And this constant wanting is exhausting. It is what keeps the mind churning, unable to rest. The king took this teaching to heart and practiced moderation. The texts say that he became healthier and more alert. He experienced directly how reducing craving reduced suffering. This is not asceticism. This is not denial. This is simply understanding what is enough, what is appropriate, what leads to well-being rather than to excess and suffering. As you lie here, consider your own relationship to craving. What are you craving right now? Perhaps sleep itself has become an object of craving. You want it so badly that the wanting creates tension, and the tension prevents the very sleep you crave. This is the paradox of craving. It creates the obstacle to its own fulfillment. Or perhaps you are craving for tomorrow to go a certain way, for a problem to resolve, for a relationship to improve, for circumstances to change. All of this craving creates tension in the mind. The mind that craves cannot rest because it is always reaching toward something that is not yet present, always dissatisfied with what is. The Buddha taught a practice specifically for working with craving. It is called the contemplation of the unattractive asubha bhava. This does not mean making things ugly or cultivating aversion. It means seeing clearly the nature of what we crave, seeing through the superficial attractiveness to the reality beneath. When we crave sensual pleasure, we see only the pleasure, not the impermanence, not the ultimate unsatisfactoriness, not the suffering of change. We are enchanted, captivated by the surface appearance. The contemplation of the unattractive breaks this enchantment, not by making things ugly, but by seeing them completely, by seeing all aspects, including the aspects we normally ignore. The beautiful flower is also dying from the moment it blooms. The delicious food will become waste matter in hours. The praised achievement will be forgotten. The comfortable circumstance will inevitably change. This is not pessimism, this is realism. This is seeing the whole truth rather than only the pleasing part. When we see the whole truth, craving naturally lessens. We are no longer chasing after illusions. We see things as they are, and this seeing brings a natural equanimity. We can enjoy beauty without clinging to it. We can experience pleasure without craving for it to last. We can accept comfort without demanding that it remain. This is the freedom that comes from understanding. Another teaching the Buddha gave about craving is found in the discourse on the simile of the snake. He taught that there are two ways of grasping things. One is like grasping a snake incorrectly, by the tail or the middle of the body. The snake, feeling threatened, will bite. The bite brings suffering. The other way is like grasping a snake correctly, with a forked stick behind its head. The snake cannot bite. It can be held safely. The same is true of the teachings and of experience itself. If we grasp the teachings or experiences incorrectly, through the lens of craving and clinging, we will suffer. If we hold them correctly, with wisdom and non-attachment, they will not cause suffering. The problem is not the teaching or the experience. The problem is how we hold it, how we relate to it. This is crucial for understanding craving. Craving is a way of relating to experience. It is not the experience itself. You can have the same experience with craving or without craving, and the result will be completely different. With craving, there is tension, dissatisfaction, suffering. Without craving, there can be peace, contentment, ease. The Buddha also taught about the gratification, danger, and escape regarding sense pleasures. The gratification is the pleasure we experience, the satisfaction, the temporary happiness. This is real. The Buddha did not deny it, but he said we must also see the danger. The danger is the impermanence, the bondage, the way pleasure binds us to the cycle of craving. And the escape is the renunciation, not of pleasure itself, but of craving for pleasure, of dependence on pleasure for our well-being. When we see all three clearly, gratification, danger, and escape, then we are no longer enslaved by sense pleasures. We can experience them without being controlled by them. We can enjoy them without needing them. This is mature renunciation, not the forced denial of the beginner, but the natural no-note attachment of one who sees clearly. Consider the relationship between craving and identity. Much of our craving is tied to our sense of self. We crave things that confirm our identity, that make us feel real, that establish us as someone. If we identify as successful, we crave recognition and achievement. If we identify as attractive, we crave admiration. If we identify as spiritual, we crave peaceful experiences and progress on the path. All of this is craving in service of self-construction. But the Buddha taught unnata, not self. He taught that there is no permanent, unchanging self to be found. In the five aggregates, this teaching directly undermines the basis of craving. If there is no self, who is doing the craving? What is being protected? What needs to be established? When this teaching is deeply understood, when it is directly seen, craving loses much of its power. There is no one to crave, no one to satisfy, no identity to establish or defend. This is not nihilism. It is not saying that nothing exists or that we don't exist. It is saying that what we take to be a solid, permanent self is actually a process, a flow, a series of conditions arising and passing. And when we see this clearly, we stop trying to solidify what is by nature fluid. We stop trying to make permanent what is by nature impermanent. And this stopping is the cessation of craving. The mind that does not crave has no need to remain awake, vigilantly seeking, constantly evaluating. It can rest. It has nowhere to go, nothing to protect, nothing to acquire, nothing to become. This is the peace the Buddha pointed to. This is the peace that makes deep rest possible. Now, the Buddha was very practical in his teachings. He did not just present lofty philosophy. He gave specific practices for working with craving in daily life. One of these is sense restraint, guarding the sense doors. This means being mindful at the moment of sense contact, when the eye sees a form, when the ear hears a sound, when the mind encounters a thought. We are present with awareness. We observe the feeling tone that arises. We observe the movement toward craving or aversion. And in that observation, we have a choice. We can follow the habitual reaction, or we can simply observe without reacting. This is not suppression. We are not trying to stop feeling from arising. We are not trying to prevent perception. We are simply bringing awareness to the process, observing how craving arises, how it operates, how it leads to further mental proliferation. And in this observation, gradually, craving loses its compulsive quality. We see it happening, and what can be seen has already lost some of its power over us. Another practice is contentment, santuthi. The Buddha praised contentment as great wealth. The contented person is rich, regardless of external circumstances. The discontented person is poor, even with abundance. Contentment is not complacency. It is not giving up on skillful effort or improvement. It is the absence of the constant craving for things to be other than they are. It is the ability to be at peace with what is, even while working skillfully to improve conditions. This contentment is especially relevant to sleep. The mind that is content can rest. The mind that constantly wants things to be different churns endlessly. Contentment does not mean you must like everything about your circumstances. It means you recognize and accept what is, even as you work to address what can be addressed. This acceptance, this lack of internal resistance, creates the conditions for rest. The Buddha also taught about the nutriment of craving, what feeds it, what sustains it. He said that inappropriate attention, ayoniso manasakara, is the nutriment of craving. Inappropriate attention means attending to things in a way that increases craving. For example, focusing on the attractive aspects of something while ignoring the unattractive aspects, focusing on what you lack rather than what you have, comparing yourself unfavorably to others. All of this is inappropriate attention. It feeds craving. It makes it stronger. Appropriate attention, yoniso manasakara, is attending to things in a way that decreases craving. Seeing things as they actually are, with all their aspects. Seeing impermanence, seeing unsatisfactoriness, seeing not-self. Reflecting on the danger in what you crave and the benefit in what you resist. This appropriate attention starves craving. It withdraws the nutriment that keeps it alive. You can practice this right now. Notice the thoughts that arise about tomorrow, about your current situation, about yourself. How are you attending to these thoughts? Are you feeding craving or starving it? Are you ruminating in ways that increase dissatisfaction? Or are you observing with clear comprehension that reduces reactivity? The ultimate teaching on craving. Is it cessation nirvana? The Buddha taught that craving can cease completely, utterly, without remainder. This is not temporary suppression. This is the complete ending of craving. And with the ending of craving comes the ending of suffering. This is nirvana, the unconditioned, the deathless, the supreme peace. The cessation of craving is possible because craving is conditioned. It arises due to causes. It is sustained by conditions. When those causes and conditions are removed, it ceases. This is the great hope of the Buddha's teaching. Suffering is not inherent to existence. It is not punishment. It is not fate. It is the result of causes, and those causes can be addressed. As you lie here tonight, you are practicing. Perhaps you did not realize it, but listening to these teachings, reflecting on them, observing your own mind, this is practice. You are developing understanding. You are seeing more clearly the nature of craving, how it operates, how it creates suffering. And in this seeing, already, craving begins to loosen its grip. The path to the cessation of craving is gradual for most people. There are sudden breakthroughs, moments of profound insight, but these are built on a foundation of accumulated understanding. Each moment of seeing craving clearly, each moment of not following it, each moment of resting in awareness. Rather than reaching with desire, these moments accumulate. They change the mind. They develop new patterns, wholesome patterns that lead toward peace rather than toward suffering. You need not try to stop craving through will. Simply observe it, see it clearly, understand its nature. And as understanding grows, craving naturally weakens. This is the gentle way, the middle way, the way the Buddha taught. Not violent suppression, not forced denial, but wise understanding leading to natural release. And now, having explored the origin of suffering, having examined how craving arises and operates, we are ready to turn to the most liberating teaching of all. We are ready to explore the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering. We are ready to understand how craving can be released, how the mind can find complete peace, how liberation is possible. Let us continue this journey into the heart of the Buddha's wisdom. We come now to the third noble truth, nirvana, the cessation of suffering. In the Dhammacappavan Sutta, the Buddha proclaimed, "This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is the most liberating teaching in all of Buddhism. Suffering can end, not temporarily, not partially, but completely, utterly, finally. The craving that drives suffering can cease. The grasping can release. The mind can find peace so profound that no circumstance can disturb it. This is not wishful thinking. This is not religious faith. This is the direct testimony of one who achieved it, and the confirmation of countless practitioners across 25 centuries, who have followed the same path and reached the same destination. The third noble truth is the declaration that Nibbana exists. Nirvana in Sanskrit, literally means extinguishing or blowing out. Like a flame that is extinguished when its fuel is exhausted, suffering is extinguished when its fuel, craving, is removed. This is not annihilation of existence. It is the extinguishing of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the end of suffering, not the end of being. But what does this cessation feel like? How can we understand it? The Buddha used many terms to describe it because it is beyond ordinary language. He called it the unconditioned, the deathless, the supreme peace, the secure, the refuge, the island amidst the flood, the further shore, the end of suffering, the unbinding, the letting go, the freedom, the liberation in the Udana A collection. Of inspired utterances, the Buddha speaks of Nibbana directly. There is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned. If there were not that unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned, there would be no escape from the born, become, made, conditioned. But since there is an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned, therefore an escape from the born, become, made, conditioned is discerned. This is a profound statement. The Buddha is pointing to something that is not part of the conditioned realm, not subject to arising and passing, not subject to birth and death. This is what makes escape possible. If everything were conditioned, if everything was subject to arising and passing, then suffering would be inevitable and inescapable. But there is the unconditioned, there is Nibbana, and therefore liberation is possible. Now the experience of Nibbana is said to be ineffable beyond words. But the Buddha did describe its characteristics to give practitioners direction. He said it is permanent, unlike all conditioned phenomena. It is happiness, but not the happiness dependent on conditions. It is peace beyond understanding. It is the complete absence of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the cessation of craving. It is the ending of dukkha. But how is this cessation achieved? This is what we must understand carefully. The cessation of craving is not achieved through more craving. We cannot crave our way to non-craving. We cannot force cessation through willpower alone. We cannot make it happen through effort. In the ordinary sense, this is a subtle point that many practitioners misunderstand. The Buddha taught that cessation comes through understanding. When the nature of craving is fully understood, when its origin is fully understood, when its danger is fully seen, when the benefit of its cessation is fully appreciated, then craving naturally releases, not through force, but through wisdom, not through suppression, but through seeing clearly. This is why the Buddha emphasized right view as the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It is seeing suffering, seeing its origin in craving, seeing that cessation is possible, and seeing the path to that cessation. This right view is what makes all other progress possible. Without it, we are lost. With it, we have direction. Let us understand more deeply what cessation means in practical terms. It means the ending of the constant reaching, the constant dissatisfaction, the constant sense of incompleteness. It means the mind no longer leans into experience with grasping or away from experience with aversion. It means perfect equanimity, perfect balance, perfect peace with whatever arises. This does not mean the mind becomes blank or unresponsive. Quite the opposite. The liberated mind is fully alive, fully aware, fully responsive, but it responds with wisdom rather than with reactivity. It meets experience with clarity rather than with confusion. It acts skillfully without being driven by compulsion. Imagine a mind that has no fear because it is not clinging to anything that can be lost. Imagine a mind that has no anxiety because it is not trying to control what cannot be controlled. Imagine a mind that has no disappointment because it is not expecting impermanent things to be permanent. This is not imagination. This is description of the liberated mind. This is what becomes possible when craving ceases. As you lie here tonight, you might wonder, how can I experience even a taste of this cessation? How can I move toward this liberation? The Buddha's answer is clear, through the Noble Eightfold Path. But even before systematic practice of the full path, there are moments when cessation can be glimpsed. Moments when craving temporarily releases and the mind touches peace. These moments often come unexpectedly. Perhaps you are in nature, standing before a vast landscape, and suddenly the constant mental chatter stops. There is simply the experience, pure and immediate, without the overlay of wanting or fearing. This is a moment of cessation, or perhaps, in deep meditation, the mind settles and all reaching ceases. There is simply awareness, resting in itself, content. This is a taste of cessation, or perhaps in a moment of profound loss. After the initial storm of grief has passed, there comes a moment of complete acceptance. Not resignation, not defeat, but a deep letting go. An understanding that this is how things are. This is the nature of existence. In that moment, while pain may remain, suffering ceases. This cessation arising through wisdom born of experience. The Buddha taught that there are two kinds of nibbana. There is nibbana with residue esaropadisa, nibbana and nibbana without. Residue and upadisasa, nibbana. The first is the experience of the living errant, the fully liberated one who still has a physical body and continues to experience the world through the senses. The body may experience pain, may experience pleasant and unpleasant sensations, but there is no craving, no suffering. The mind is completely free even while the body continues. The second is the final nibbana at the death of the arahant, when even the five aggregates dissolve completely. This is beyond all description because there is no reference point left in the conditioned world. But the Buddha assured his disciples that this is not annihilation. It is not nothingness. It is the unconditioned, which cannot be understood through conditioned concepts. For our purposes tonight, what matters is the first kind, the cessation that is possible here and now, in this very life, with this very mind. This is what the Buddha taught is achievable through dedicated practice. This is what makes the teaching practical and relevant. We need not wait for death to experience liberation. We can taste it now, develop it now, realize it now. The key to this cessation is letting go, relinquishment, vasaga in Pali. This is perhaps the most important word in the Buddha's practical teachings. Letting go. Not suppressing, not denying, not running away, but releasing, relinquishing, allowing to be. But what does it mean to let go? This is often misunderstood. Letting go does not mean not caring. It does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It does not mean abandoning responsibility or wisdom or compassion. Letting go means releasing, clinging, releasing the grasping, releasing the identification with experience as me and mine. You can care deeply about someone without clinging to them. You can work diligently toward goals without craving results. You can enjoy pleasant experiences without grasping at them. You can learn from unpleasant experiences without pushing them away. This is the art of letting go. This is the middle way between attachment and aversion. The Buddha used the simile of a man carrying a heavy burden. Every step is effortful, exhausting. Then he sets the burden down. There is immediate relief, immediate ease. This is what letting go feels like. The burden of craving, of constant grasping and pushing, is heavy. When it is released, even momentarily, there is palpable relief. The mind becomes light. The body relaxes. Peace arises naturally. You can experience this right now. Notice where you are holding tension, either in body or mind. Notice where you are resisting what is, where you are wanting things to be different. And just for this moment, experiment with letting go. Not changing anything externally, but internally releasing the clinging, releasing the resistance. Notice what happens. Notice if there is even a small sense of ease, of relief, of peace. This is not magical. This is the natural result of ceasing to create suffering. When we stop the internal war against reality, when we stop demanding that impermanent things be permanent, when we stop trying to control what cannot be controlled, suffering naturally decreases. This is cause and effect. This is the law of dependent origination operating in reverse. When craving ceases, suffering ceases. The Buddha taught specific practices for cultivating this letting go. One is the practice of impermanence contemplation, anakonapassana. This means observing directly, repeatedly, persistently, that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Every thought arises and passes. Every sensation appears and disappears. Every emotion comes and goes. Every experience is in constant flux. When impermanence is seen clearly, deeply, repeatedly, clinging naturally weakens. Why grasp at what is already slipping away? Why try to hold on to what is by nature flowing? The mind that truly understands impermanence learns to move with the flow rather than against it. It learns to appreciate each moment as it is, knowing it will not last, and therefore not demanding that it last. Another practice is the contemplation of not-self, anattanupassana. This means observing that nowhere in experience can a permanent, unchanging self be found. The body is not self, it is changing. Feelings are not self, they come and go. Perceptions are not self, they are constructed. Mental formations are not self, they are conditioned. Consciousness is not self, it arises and ceases. When not self is understood, the question arises, who is doing the clinging? If there is no permanent self, what is being protected? What is being established? This understanding undermines the very basis of craving. Craving operates on the assumption of a self that needs protecting, satisfying, establishing. When that assumption is seen through, craving loses its foundation. A third practice is the contemplation of suffering, dukkha nupassana. This means observing clearly how suffering arises through clinging and ceases through letting go. Not just believing this intellectually, but seeing it directly in your own experience. Watch how grasping at a pleasant experience creates tension. Watch how resisting an unpleasant experience creates struggle. Watch how letting go brings ease. This direct observation is more powerful than any teaching. When you see for yourself, repeatedly, that clinging causes suffering and letting go brings peace, the mind naturally inclines toward letting go. It is not forced. It is not effortful. It is simply the natural response to clear seeing. There is a story in the Majjhima Nikaya that beautifully illustrates letting go. It is the story of the lute string told by the Buddha to the monk Sona. Sona was a young monk who was practicing with great intensity. He would walk in meditation until his feet bled. He pushed himself relentlessly, thinking that only through extreme effort could he achieve awakening. But despite his heroic efforts, he made no progress. Instead, he became exhausted and discouraged. He began to think perhaps he was not suited for the monastic life. Perhaps he should return to his family, to the wealth he had left behind, and practice as a layperson. The Buddha, through his telepathic powers, knew what Sona was thinking. He appeared to him and asked Sona, "When you were a householder, were you skilled at playing the lute?" Sona confirmed that he was. The Buddha then asked, "When the strings of your lute were too tight, was it in tune and playable?" Sona replied, "No, benedablecir." And when the strings were too loose, was it in tune and playable? No, benedablecir. But when the strings were neither too tight nor too loose, but adjusted to an even pitch, was your lute then in tune and playable? Yes, venerable sir. The Buddha then taught, in the same way, Sona, excessive energy leads to restlessness, and insufficient energy leads to laziness. Therefore, Sona, resolve on an even level of energy, find the right pitch for your faculties, and take up your task there. Sona followed this advice. He adjusted his practice, finding the middle way between extreme effort and laxity. Soon after, he achieved full liberation. He became an arahant. This story teaches us about letting go in a profound way. Letting go is not a matter of more effort, more striving, more forcing. It is a matter of balance, of finding the right adjustment, of allowing rather than demanding. When the mind is too tight with effort, there is strain. When the mind is too loose with laxity, there is no progress. But when the mind finds the middle way, when there is alert relaxation, engaged ease, then progress becomes natural. This is directly relevant to sleep. The mind that tries too hard to sleep cannot sleep. The trying creates the obstacle, but the mind that gives up all effort may simply continue churning. The middle way is alert relaxation, aware but not striving, present but not grasping. This is the quality that allows sleep to come naturally. The Buddha also taught about gradual cessation, how the mind progressively lets go of grosser attachments before it can let go of subtler ones. He compared it to the ocean, which deepens gradually, slopes away gradually, not plunging suddenly to great depths. In the same way, the practice leads gradually to deeper and deeper letting go. First, we let go of gross unwholesome behaviors. We stop harming others. We stop taking what is not given. We stop harmful speech. This is moral conduct sila, the foundation of practice. Without this foundation, the mind is too disturbed, too burdened with remorse and consequence, to progress further. Then we let go of gross hindrances. We observe the mind's tendency towards sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, doubt. We see these arising and we practice not feeding them, not following them. This allows concentration to develop. As concentration develops, we let go of identification with thoughts. We see thoughts arising and passing like clouds in the sky. We do not take them so personally, so seriously. This is a significant letting go. Most people are completely identified with their thoughts, believing that their thoughts are truth, a reality, are who they are. When this identification releases, there is great freedom. Then we let go of identification with emotions. We see emotions as energy moving through the body-mind, arising due to conditions, passing when conditions change. We do not need to suppress them or act them out. We can simply observe them with equanimity. This letting go brings stability. Progressively, we let go of identification with all five aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. All are seen as impermanent processes, not as self. This is the deepest letting go, the letting go that leads to complete liberation. But we need not achieve complete liberation to benefit from the teaching of letting go. Every small release, every moment of non-clinging, brings a measure of peace. The practice is not all or nothing. It is gradual, progressive, cumulative. Each step taken is valuable in itself and prepares the ground for the next step. The Buddha taught that there are 4 stages of awakening, for progressively deeper realizations of truth. The stream enterer has glimpsed Nibbana directly and can never again completely fall back into ignorance. The one's returner has weakened sensual desire and ill-willed significantly. The non-returner has eliminated them completely. The Arahant has eliminated all fetters, all chains that bind consciousness to suffering. But even before stream entry, even in the very beginning of practice, there are benefits. The person who practices moral conduct experiences the peace of blamelessness. The person who develops concentration experiences the peace of a settled mind. The person who cultivates wisdom experiences the peace of understanding. All of these are valuable. All of these are worth pursuing. And here is a liberating truth. You are already practicing. Right now, as you lie here listening to these teachings, contemplating them, observing your own mind, you are engaging in wise reflection. You are developing understanding. You are planting seeds of wisdom that will bear fruit. The Buddha said that there are 3 ways of making merit, of creating positive karma: dana, giving sila, moral conduct, and bhavana, mental development through meditation and study. You are engaging in bhavana. Right now, you are developing your mind. This is powerful. This has consequences. This is changing you in subtle but real ways. Let us explore more deeply the relationship between letting go and impermanence. The Buddha taught that truly understanding impermanence is the direct path to cessation. Why? Because when impermanence is deeply seen, directly experienced, thoroughly penetrated, clinging becomes impossible. You cannot cling to what you truly know is flowing away. You cannot grasp what you see is by nature ungrasping-able. Most of us know, intellectually, that things are impermanent. We know people die. We know circumstances change. We know our bodies age. But this knowing is superficial. It has not penetrated deeply. We live as if things are permanent. We make plans assuming continuity. We cling to relationships as if they will last forever. We identify with our body as if it is stable. This is the ignorance the Buddha pointed to. True understanding of impermanence comes through direct observation. Watch the breath. Each inhalation is unique, never to be repeated. Each exhalation dissolves into space. The breath of this moment is not the breath of the last moment. It is constantly new, constantly dying, constantly being born. This is impermanence. Not as concept, but as lived reality. Watch sensations in the body, that ache in the back, is it constant? Look closely. Is it not a flow of sensations, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, sometimes spreading, sometimes concentrated, appearing, disappearing, changing moment by moment? Where is the solid, unchanging ache? It cannot be found. There is only flow. Watch. Emotions. Anger arises, seems overwhelming, appears as if it will last forever. But watch it carefully without feeding it with thoughts. See how it changes. See how it has a peak and then begins to subside. See how it is made of components, body sensations, mental images, evaluative thoughts. See how these components themselves are changing. The anger that seems so solid reveals itself as a process, a flow, empty of permanent essence. This seeing, this direct observation, is what the Buddha called vipassana, insight. It is not thinking about impermanence. It is seeing it directly, and in seeing it, understanding arises. Not intellectual understanding, but experiential understanding. Understanding that transforms because it changes how we relate to experience. When impermanence is truly seen, three insights naturally follow. First, if all things are impermanent, they cannot provide lasting satisfaction. This is the insight into dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. Second, if all things are impermanent and unsatisfactory when clung to, they are not suitable to be regarded as me or mine. This is the insight into unicca, not self. These three characteristics, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, are called the three marks of existence. To see them clearly is to see reality as it is. The Buddha taught a specific meditation for deep insight into impermanence. It is called the contemplation of death, Marananusati. This is not morbid, it is realistic. Death is certain. The time of death is uncertain. This is true for everyone, without exception. Contemplating this focuses the mind wonderfully. What becomes important when death is clearly understood? What attachments seem worth maintaining? What conflicts seem worth perpetuating? Ajahn Chah, a great Thai forest master of the 20th century, used to encourage his students to contemplate death regularly. He would say, if you are not sure whether you are practicing correctly, ask yourself, am I prepared to die right now? If the answer is no, your practice needs adjustment. This is not meant to create fear, but to create urgency, to help us use our time wisely, to encourage letting go of what is not essential. Another practice for cultivating letting go is the practice of generosity, dana. Generosity is literally the practice of letting go. You have something, and you give it away. You release your hold on it. You practice non-clinging in a very concrete way. The Buddha taught that generosity is the foundation of the path. Before people are ready for deeper teachings, they should first practice giving. Why is generosity so important? Because it directly counters greed, one of the three roots of suffering. When you give, you experience that letting go brings happiness. You see that your security does not depend on accumulating and hoarding. You see that there is joy in releasing rather than in grasping. This experiential understanding then carries over into other areas of practice. You can practice generosity of material things, of time, of attention, of presence, of forgiveness. All of these are forms of giving, forms of letting go. All of them. Create happiness for yourself and others. All of them weaken the grip of craving. The Buddha also taught metta, loving kindness, as a practice that leads toward letting go. When the heart is filled with love, with genuine care for the welfare of others, there is no room for hatred, for ill will, for resentment. Metta is a way of releasing the heart from negative states, allowing it to rest in a positive, wholesome quality. That traditional metta practice involves mentally reciting phrases of well-wishing. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. Then extending these wishes to others, to loved ones, to neutral people, to difficult people, to all beings. This practice softens the heart. It reduces the sense of separation between self and other. It cultivates a quality of openness and care that naturally reduces clinging. As you lie here, you might practice metta for yourself. You might recognize that you deserve kindness, you deserve care, you deserve peace. The mind that is harsh with itself, that judges and criticizes, cannot rest. But the mind that meets itself with friendliness, with compassion, can settle. May you be at peace. May you be free from suffering. May you rest easily. These are not just nice words. They are powerful intentions that shape the quality of mind. Let us return to the central question. How does cessation actually occur? The Buddha described it as the fading away of passion, viraga. Viraga means dispassion, but not in the sense of becoming cold or unfeeling. It means the ending of feverish craving, the cooling of the burning of desire. When passion fades, when craving lessens, when grasping releases, cessation naturally occurs. This fading happens through seeing clearly. When you see the danger in what you crave, when you see the benefit in letting go, when you see the impermanent nature of all objects of craving, passion naturally fades. Not through force, but through understanding. The mind that sees clearly loses interest in what it previously craved. Not because it suppresses desire, but because it sees the futility of pursuing what cannot satisfy. Think of how you might have craved certain things as a child that you no longer crave as an adult. Perhaps toys, perhaps games, perhaps foods. These cravings do not end through willpower. They ended through growing in understanding, through seeing that these things no longer satisfy in the way you need. This is natural maturation. The spiritual path is the same process, but applied to all cravings, even the subtlest ones. The Buddha compared this process to the ocean gradually evaporating under the heat of the sun. Drop by drop, the ocean decreases. In the same way, moment by moment, through clear seeing, through understanding, through non-engagement with craving, the ocean of suffering gradually evaporates. There may not be a dramatic moment where everything suddenly changes, though such moments do occur for some. More commonly, there is gradual transformation, gradual lightening, gradual peace. This gradual path should encourage us. We need not achieve complete enlightenment in one night. We need only take one step, understand one thing, let go of one clinging. This is enough. This is valuable. This is progress. And each step makes the next step easier. There is a beautiful teaching in the Itavataka, a collection of short discourses. The Buddha says, there are these two kinds of happiness. the happiness of household life and the happiness of renunciation. Of these two, the happiness of renunciation is supreme. There are these two kinds of happiness, the happiness connected to attachment and the happiness not connected to attachment. Of these two, the happiness not connected to attachment is supreme. There are these two kinds of happiness, the happiness of the senses and the happiness not of the senses. Of these two, the happiness not of the senses is supreme. This teaching points to progressive, letting go leading to progressively deeper happiness. We might think that letting go means losing happiness, but the Buddha teaches the opposite. The happiness that comes from letting go is superior to the happiness that comes from grasping. Why? Because it is not dependent on conditions. It does not fade. It does not disappoint. It is the happiness of freedom itself. You might taste this even now. Notice if there is any moment where craving has temporarily ceased, perhaps in a moment of full attention to the present, perhaps in a moment of acceptance of what is. In that moment, how does the mind feel? Is there not a quality of ease, of peace, of okayness? This is the happiness of non-clinging. This is what becomes available when we stop fighting reality. The final teaching we must understand about cessation is that it is not a distant goal, not something that exists only at the end of the path. Every moment of letting go is a moment of cessation. Every moment of non-craving is a moment of peace. The practice is not about achieving some future state. It is about this moment, this breath, this experience, met with wisdom and non-clinging. The Buddha taught about two kinds of release: release through wisdom and release through concentration. Release through wisdom is seeing clearly the three characteristics and thereby letting go of clinging. Release through concentration is the temporary suspension of hindrances through deep meditative absorption. Both are valuable. Both bring peace. Ultimately, complete liberation requires wisdom, but concentration supports and enables the development of wisdom. As you lie here, you might experience moments of deep concentration naturally arising. The mind settles, becomes absorbed in the teachings, becomes quiet. These are valuable moments. They give the mind rest. They show what is possible. They create faith that peace is achievable. Do not grasp at them. Do not try to force them to continue. Simply appreciate them when they occur and let them go when they pass. This itself is practice of letting go. We must also understand that letting go does not mean we become passive or indifferent. The Buddha was enormously active. He taught for 45 years after his enlightenment, traveling constantly, establishing the Sangha, guiding thousands of students. He was not passive, but he was free from craving. His actions came from wisdom and compassion, not from craving and aversion. This is the key difference. You can engage fully with life while letting go of clinging. You can work diligently without craving results. You can love deeply without grasping at the beloved. You can care about outcomes without being attached to. Then, this is the middle way, the balanced way, the wise way. It is not cold detachment. It is warm engagement combined with wisdom. As we come to the end of this exploration of cessation, let us reflect on what we have understood. Cessation is possible. It is the ending of craving through understanding. It comes through seeing clearly. The impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self nature of all conditioned phenomena. It develops gradually through practice, and it brings happiness that surpasses all conditioned happiness. This is the third noble truth, the truth that gives hope, the truth that motivates practice. Because of this truth, we know that our efforts are not in vain. We know that peace is possible. We know that the suffering we experience is not necessary, not permanent, not inevitable. This knowledge gives us strength to practice, patience, to persist, faith to continue. And now, having understood that cessation is possible, having glimpsed what it might mean to let go, we turn to the practical question: how? What is the actual path? What are the specific practices that lead to this? Cessation. This is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, the most practical and detailed teaching the Buddha gave. Let us explore this path together, the path that leads from suffering to peace, from bondage to liberation, from ignorance to wisdom. And so we come to the end of this journey through the Buddha's wisdom. We have traveled together through the landscape of suffering and its cessation, through the territory of craving and letting go, through the understanding that transforms. How we meet each moment. Let us rest now in what we have explored. There is no need to hold tightly to any of it. These teachings are not possessions to be grasped. They are signposts pointing to truth, invitations to look more deeply at your own experience. The words will fade, but the understanding they point to can continue to unfold. Remember the essence. Suffering arises from misunderstanding, from relating to experience through the lens of craving and clinging. When we see clearly the impermanent, flowing nature of all things, when we understand that grasping at what cannot be held creates pain, when we learn to meet life with wisdom rather than with compulsive reactivity, suffering naturally decreases. Peace naturally arises. This is not distant philosophy. This is immediate, practical truth. Right now, in this moment, as you lie here, you can practice what we have explored. Simply notice experience as it is. The breath moving in and out. Sensations in the body appearing and disappearing. Thoughts arising and passing like clouds. All of it flowing, changing, empty of permanent essence. And notice your relationship to this flow. Are you fighting against it? Are you wanting it to be different? Or can you, just for this moment, allow it to be exactly as it is? Can you rest in the flow rather than struggling against it? This is the practice. This is the path. This is what leads from agitation to peace. The Buddha taught that we should be like the earth, like water, like fire, like wind. The earth receives all things, pleasant and unpleasant, clean and dirty, without preference, without rejection. Water flows around obstacles, adapting to conditions without resistance. Fire burns all things equally, transforming without attachment. Wind moves through space freely, unobstructed. This is the quality of the awakened mind, receptive, flowing, transforming, free. You need not achieve this perfectly. You need only incline toward it. The mind that inclines toward wisdom, toward letting go, toward understanding, this mind is already on the path, already changing, already moving toward peace. As you settle deeper into rest, know that this is not wasted time. This listening, this contemplation, this gentle observation of your own experience, all of this is practice. You are cultivating the seeds of wisdom. These seeds will grow in their own time, according to their own nature. Your task is simply to plant them, to water them with attention, to provide the conditions for growth. The growing itself happens naturally. Let go now of any effort to understand completely, to remember everything, to achieve anything. Let these teachings settle into the deeper levels of mind where they can work silently, transforming from within. Trust the process. Trust the wisdom of the Buddha who walked this path before you. Trust your own capacity for understanding, for letting go, for finding peace. The Buddha's final words to his disciples were these: all conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive with diligence. This is not a harsh command. It is a gentle encouragement. Everything changes. This moment will pass. This night will end. This life will conclude. Knowing this, use your time wisely. Practice with sincerity. Develop understanding. Cultivate peace. But strive with the right kind of effort. Remember Sona and the lute string. Not too tight, not too loose. Find the middle way. The effort that is relaxed yet alert, engaged yet peaceful, directed yet flowing. This is the effort that bears fruit, and even as you practice, remember to be gentle with yourself. The path is gradual. Progress is not always obvious. There will be difficulties, doubts, setbacks. This is natural. This is part of the journey. The Buddha himself, before his awakening, experienced 6 years of intense struggle. But he persevered, he adjusted his approach, and he found the way. You too will find the way in your own time, according to your own conditions. For now, simply rest. Let the body be at ease. Let the breath flow naturally. Let thoughts come and go without engagement. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do, nothing you need to become. Just this moment, just this breath, just this awareness. Simple, natural, complete. That wisdom you have touched tonight will continue to work within you. In dreams, in the space between sleeping and waking, in the quiet moments of tomorrow, insights will arise. Understandings will deepen. Peace will grow. Trust this process. It is the nature of wisdom to unfold, to reveal itself progressively, to transform the mind gradually but surely. May you rest in peace. May you awaken with clarity. May you move through your days with the wisdom of impermanence, lighting your path. May you find the freedom that comes from letting go. May you know the happiness that does not depend on conditions. May you be well. May you be at ease. May you be free from suffering. These teachings have been offered by countless awakened beings across the centuries, transmitted from teacher to student in an unbroken lineage of wisdom. You are part of this lineage now. You have received the teachings. You have contemplated them. You have begun to understand. This connects you to all who have walked this path before and to all who will walk it after. Rest now in this connection. Rest in the timeless truth that the Buddha discovered. Rest in your own capacity for awakening. Rest in the peace that is always available when we stop fighting against reality and learn to flow with it. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." This is the final teaching. What you are seeking is not far away. It is not in some future achievement or attainment. It is here, now, in the simple act of letting go, of accepting what is, of resting in awareness itself. So let go now. Release the day that has passed. Release concern for the day to come. Release even these teachings. Let everything settle. Let everything be. And in this letting go, discover what remains when all grasping ceases. Discover the peace that has always been here, waiting beneath the turbulence, waiting beneath the striving, waiting to be recognized. Sleep well, rest deeply, and may the wisdom of the Buddha's teachings bring you lasting peace, now and always.